This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. 5 years ago, deep in a bear market, a group of traditional finance experts founded BitGet, and they've been building ever since. Now, with 20 million users worldwide, BitGet is committed to helping users trade smarter by providing a secure one-stop crypto investment solution with copy trading, future trading, and spot trading. Your security is their priority, and BitGet has one of the largest protection funds in the industry with US $300 million to cover potential trader losses from unforeseen events that are not due to misconduct from the user or platform. BitGet wants to inspire everyone to embrace Web3, so if you're new to crypto, learn more at the BitGet Academy with free blockchain courses, crypto guides, cryptocurrency trading strategies, and more. Or for the experienced investor, trade smarter with daily access to institutional-grade crypto market intelligence and trends analysis with BitGet Research. I've put links to BitGet Research and the BitGet Academy in the show notes, so get amongst it or simply go to bitget.com. Thank you to BitGet, and now it is on with the show. And my guest today is Riad Wahby. Riad is the CEO and co-founder at Cubist. Very interesting looking new company platform. They're solving key management. We'll learn all about this today. Welcome to the show, Riad.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it is a pleasure. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show, Riad. It'd be great if you could please introduce yourself. It'd be really good if we could hear some of your personal and professional backstory. What you've been doing, I believe, involves computer science. Be surprised if it didn't. What you've been doing in the lead up to co-founding Cubist.
Yeah. So believe it or not, it actually starts with electrical engineering, not computer science. So a long time ago, I realized I really like to get into the guts of things. And somehow as an undergrad, I was like, the guttiest of guts is like, low-level circuits. And so I ended up as an integrated circuit designer, spent, about 10 years designing chips. And at some point, I was friends with somebody who was a computer science professor, and he told me, these new things called zero knowledge proofs, they're really cool, and we're starting to build on them, and you should join us. And his name is Mike Wallfish. At the time, he was at the University of Texas. Now he's at NYU. And at the time, I told him, you're crazy because I have a job and I own a house, and I'm not going to quit my job to go to grad school and work on ZK proofs. But somehow 2 years later, he convinced me that indeed I should. So I ended up getting out of the circuits business, going to grad school, worked with Mike for a while at NYU, then ended up at Stanford working with Dan Bonnet, did my PhD there, and worked on all sorts of interesting cryptographic protocols that had to do eventually with Web3. So this was at the start, kind of before people cared about ZK proofs, before people thought about using rollups and all these sort of amazing technologies that really seem now kind of inseparable from Web3, but at the time it wasn't quite like that. And so at some point somebody said, hey, you should think about rollups, you should think about anonymous airdrops, and so Dan and I started working on these things, and Dan kind of always had a good nose for what people needed next. We ended up working on some really kind of low-level, gnarly cryptographic protocols that ended up being sort of what underlies the beacon chain on Ethereum and some other chains. That's BLS signatures. We wrote the standard for that and did some sort of hash functions. And anyway, I'm getting nerdy, but anyhow, so then at the end of grad school, I was sort of applying for academic jobs. I was fortunate enough to end up as a professor at Carnegie Mellon. So I get to teach and do research on cryptography, ZK proof, stuff like that. And then at the same time, some of the folks that I knew from grad school that I'd been doing research with for a while, we talked about, oh geez, we've done some interesting research here, and it seems like it would be great to kind of put it together and put together a product, and Web3 seemed like the right place to do that. And so my co-founders Fraser and Dayon were both like me, were PhD students at Stanford, and then we ended up kind of starting Cubist, thinking about kind of cool technology that we could build. But at some point we realized, well, we're three nerds. We don't really know how to build a business. And so our co-founder Ann was kind enough to join us. She's a fintech veteran. She was a COO of a company for a long time. She knows a lot about anti-fraud and about sort of preventing loss. And so, sort of was a totally natural fit when we started to think about things like securing keys and, making sure that people, even if you get hacked, you're still secure. That's sort of the ultimate goal, right? And so that's how we ended up as Cubist. So, it was a strange ride, but kind of a fun one.
I like it. Thank you very much, Riad. And look, I have to ask, because I think the photo that you're using, I guess, is your Zoom background, a Zoom avatar. I think maybe I've seen it on your Twitter as well, but you're holding what we used to call back in the 1980s a ghetto blaster or a boombox for the breakdance posse. But does that have anything to do with your electrical engineering background? And you're wearing sunglasses?
I'm sorry to say, it doesn't have much to do with it, other than I cannot resist anytime I find a boombox or a ghetto blaster. I can't resist seeing if somebody will take a picture, of me with the boombox on my shoulder. So this happens to be the one that's turned out the best so far. So as I collect better ones, next time we talk, maybe I'll have an even better one up there.
I like it. All right. Well, 10 out of 10 for style points, Riad. So
thank you.
Let's love to just hear a little bit more then, I suppose, of what, let's just call it the origin story of Cubist. So maybe just talk a little bit about some of the problems perhaps that you've identified, and why you decided to potentially, I guess, start Cubist to try and help solve these problems for, the wider Web3 industry.
Yeah, so we started out thinking about since we're kind of nerds and developers, and we started out with this kind of developer-centric experience, vision, this developer-centric viewpoint that was like, well, what can you do to make life easier for developers? And we had all these crazy ideas, and my co-founders, Fraser and Dayon, are both, they're sort of into programming language compilers, formal verification, kind of amazing stuff. And so we had all these kind of amazing ideas that we thought for, you can make the programming so much better for building, smart contracts and DeFi applications. And as we kind of dug into this, really encouraged by Ann, who, as I said, kind of is the one who knows how to run a business, she said, you got to talk to customers. You got to make sure you're not just imagining this problem. And we did, and we heard over and over again the same thing. As you talk to people in Web3, I think it's sort of an open secret that the actual problem that people have in almost all cases is, what do you do about the keys? So this is kind of an interesting question, because, why are we focused on keys in the first place? Well, to me, really one of the primary distinctions between Web 2 and Web 3 is the fact that everything you do in Web 3 is mediated by cryptography. Right? If I want to post a transaction, if I want to interact in any way with a blockchain, I'm generating a signature on some message and I'm sending that message, right? So every identity is really a cryptographic key. Every message is really a signature on a message, right? And so your keys are your interface to the world. And what we found was that people were having real trouble with that interface. So we talked to companies that had, one laptop with all the keys on them and one person in charge of that laptop. And, if that person was out on Thursdays, then nobody got anything done. Or, we talked to other companies where it was like, well, we can't afford to have a bottleneck. So everyone's just going to have copies of the keys, and we better pray that, they don't lose, that they don't somehow get hacked. And it seemed like this was kind of a stark example of this trade-off between security on the one hand and convenience or, usability on the other. And I think as we looked deeper and deeper, we saw this everywhere. So if you look at the way that people think about wallets today, you have people who are very much on the sort of extreme security end of the spectrum, where they're like, well, I'm going to have my ledger, my hardware wallet. I'm going to write down my seed phrase on, some metal plates and bury it in my backyard. And, I'm going to interact with my ledger only on a computer that never connects to the internet, okay, all these sorts of measures, right? And the result is that, you want to do anything, it takes you, 30 minutes to get something done, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have folks who are like, look, I just need to get stuff done. I'm going to whatever technology will get me there the fastest. That's what I'm going to do. And unfortunately, that technology that gets you there the fastest until this point really has been a total sacrifice in terms of security. And I think, unfortunately, most people are making that sacrifice. Most people are choosing the convenience because, frankly, you just can't ask people. You can't say to somebody, look, this is a brand new space. This is an amazing set of technologies. And it's so advanced that the user experience sucks. Like, that's not a convincing story, right? You can't tell somebody that they just have to suffer because of how advanced the technology is, because that's just a terrible message, and it doesn't fly, right? So I think instead what you have is people just sort of giving up on security, and that to me is like a real disaster, because this is the space I think can't evolve until we can actually have good user experience and at the same time good performance and good security.
Yeah, look, I could not agree more. So that's extremely well articulated, Riad. So I guess you've laid out perhaps the current state of the crypto user experience and the various trade-offs that people have to make, really just between ease of use and security. But the reality is, a lot of people in the crypto ecosystem, it's just hard not to have that kind of nagging feeling at the back of your head sometimes. Are my assets as safe as they could be? And a lot of the time the answer is perhaps not. But as you say, particularly for crypto natives who are really active in whatever it may be across DeFi or NFTs or trading, whatever it is, they need access as well. So, funnily enough, I believe you guys have announced or released, in fact, a new product just this week, which is described as a wallet as a service product. I had a little look at this. Looks really interesting, actually. So, I suppose, Riad, maybe we just dive right into that. It's called CubeSigner, right?
Yes, that's right. So CubeSigner is really designed to kind of smash this trade-off. You shouldn't have to choose between security and performance and convenience. You should be able to get all of them. And okay, I mean, that sounds aspirational. It sounds like, oh, sure, you could say that, but how do you make it happen? Well, so our approach here is really kind of a combination of things. So first of all, our team is really sort of security-focused people, industry and academic veterans. So we've been thinking about problems like this for a really long time. And because of that, we've seen kind of a lot of systems that maybe make the wrong trade-offs. And I think once you've seen enough counterexamples, maybe that helps you to find the good way to go. And so in this case, one of the things that we decided early on was the state of the ecosystem right now is such that the right way to go is to build on top of secure hardware. So that means using the same kinds of sort of underlying technologies that power banks, that power e-commerce, that sort of secure the entire Web 2 ecosystem, and building on that technology, but leveraging it for Web 3. And so what that means is you get sort of great performance and you get really fine-grained control over who can do what. So what our system does then is it lets us offer to the customer the ability to generate tons of wallets very quickly, to set policies on those wallets, to say, this wallet can only be used to pay, or to interact with these 5 smart contracts, or, if you try to send a payment above a certain amount, you need multi-factor authentication, or, policies like that, the policies that kind of make sense, right? The kinds of things that you expect to see on, say, a credit card. This looks like a fraudulent transaction. Maybe we're going to push pause and wait until somebody can sort of confirm it, a human being can confirm it. And that sort of thing, which is kind of totally natural in the credit card ecosystem and in the Web 2 ecosystem more generally, is really not something that we tend to see in Web 3. So I would say kind of that combination of, the folks on our team who are really kind of security professionals, and then Ann, our COO, who's really got a background in sort of fraud prevention, kind of putting those things together, we were able to really kind of come up with a system that gives you, something that looks much more like a Web 2 experience. And so, okay, so now that you have that, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that you can do things like build end user wallets that give you kind of a normal Web 2 looking workflow. Like I log in with Google, maybe I do some kind of multi-factor authentication with whether it's, Google Authenticator or a YubiKey or whatever it might be. And now I've got access to my wallet, right? And there's no seed phrases, there's no need to sort of go through kind of crazy rigmarole, and yet get really, really good security and really fast performance. So that means you log in, There's no, waiting 10 seconds for the login screen to go away. It happens very quickly. I need to make a transaction, go ahead, make that transaction. And then, maybe there was some kind of fraud alert that got fired off. Fine, no problem. Maybe I can handle that with, an extra step of authentication or whatever it might be. But so by bringing those kind of what we think of as natural workflows in the Web 2 space, by bringing those to Web 3, I think what you're going to see is that more and more users who are frankly turned off by the kind of bleeding edge kind of the state of Web 3 right now will kind of come into the ecosystem. And to me, that's the way we have to evolve. We have to evolve towards more users who aren't just there for the fact that it's a bleeding edge, who aren't just there for speculation, but they're there for real functionality. They're there to use something that they want to have on a day-to-day basis. And we don't have to sort of get them to change their computing lifestyle in order to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Again, really well said. What you're saying makes so much sense, Riad. So, if we can use that real world example then of someone who is perhaps, they might have some existing assets, or they're new to crypto and they're just looking to invest because they can see that, there are perhaps a number of positive catalysts on the horizon for Bitcoin and perhaps crypto as a whole, but they're not crypto native necessarily. Describe for them how that user could use this wallet as a service, CubeSigner. Let's just say to secure, so they have like a number of Bitcoin and maybe just a little bit of Ethereum as well. They're not necessarily going to want to play around or trade, but they want to use the product just to keep their assets safe. How would it be different from an existing like Ledger or Trezor or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I should be clear. This product is when we say wallet as a service, what we really mean here is this is kind of the plumbing for somebody to build a great wallet experience for an end user. So we are not ourselves interacting with end users, and that's by design. We want to make sure that our customers who are building a great wallet experience or maybe a brand new NFT marketplace or whatever it might be, we want to make sure that they don't look over their shoulders at us and say, hey, when are you going to start competing with us? Because the answer is we won't. We're fundamentally, we're plumbers and we want our customers to build the porcelain. And so the answer is really, it depends on what our customer does in order to delight their customers. But I can give you a concrete example of a partner that we're working with right now. Unfortunately, I can't say the name, but it'll be announced quite soon. The workflow for them, which I'm very excited about, is you can this is something that you can use in your browser. It's something that you can use on a phone app. But however you're using it, let's say I'm working in a browser extension. So I click login. I go through the standard login with Google Flow, and it says, you're granting permission to read your email address, not your email, read your email address, just to granting, permission to read your identity. So you click through that. Maybe you do a quick sort of two-factor authentication, whether it's using like a Duo app on your phone or something like this. And then boom, you're logged in. And now you've got a dashboard in front of you that says, these are the keys that you've got, or these are the wallets that you've got. You've got some Ethereum, you've got some Bitcoin, maybe you've got some whatever it might be. Okay, here I want to swap, or I want to interact with, say, SushiSwap, or I want to interact with Uniswap, or whatever it might be. And all of those sort of interactions happen extremely quickly. And if I'm sort of paranoid about my wallet security, maybe I demand that each time I have to do some kind of multi-factor authentication, or maybe instead there's something more adaptive where it's only a $5 transaction. That's no problem. Where that can go through no problem. But if somebody suddenly says, we want to do a $10,000 transaction, sure, anyone wants a little bit of extra security on that, right? So fundamentally, the experience here is just like logging into your email, or just like logging into Facebook or whatever it might be. You click through, you type in your password, and maybe you use your YubiKey to log in, and then you've got access to everything, right? So this means I'm not starting up a special application to interact with my ledger. It means I don't have to, enter my 6-digit passcode on the ledger or whatever it might be. Because all of those things, I think, frankly, are good for a certain type of person in the ecosystem, but I think they're not good for the overwhelming majority of people in the ecosystem.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Riad. And look, I suppose if we zoom out a little bit, what you're talking about is it's a really common theme at the moment across Web3. And I suppose that theme is that for the next adoption cycle, or for the next wave of new users to come into Web3, what is needed is that kind of classic Web 2 user experience, except on Web 3 rails. So I suppose the simplified way of explaining that is you're kind of abstracting away some of the cryptographic functions as much as possible, with just a clear focus on making the experience as simple and seamless as possible. Do you think that is really going to be the characterizing feature, I suppose, of the next wave of Web3?
Absolutely. I think that's probably the single most important thing. I think one thing that's easy to forget, especially for folks who have been in Web3 for a while, who have been, kind of interacting with everything from the beginning, is it's pretty easy to forget just how hard it was for those first couple weeks that you were using, Web3 technologies, right? You're going to, whatever it is, you're finding a Medium post, or you're digging through forums to, figure out some esoteric command to make the thing work, right? And I think a lot of people had that experience, and then somehow there's this like amnesia effect where you just forget. And part of that is just that I think most of the folks who are in Web3 now are like fundamentally kind of bleeding edge early adopters, right? And so I think it's hard for a lot of us to look at folks who are not early adopters and to understand their perspective. And I think like fundamentally, this is about kind of getting over the hump of getting from sort of an ecosystem that really is focused almost exclusively on, early adopter type folks, and moving into an ecosystem that's focused on kind of everyone else, right? And I think, we've seen a lot of this happen in the past, right? I don't know, the first time I had an internet connection was sometime in the early 90s, and it was an interesting experience, right? It was tough. I would read, I don't know, Wired magazine or something, and like I remember having trouble figuring out like why the magazine is trying to tell me a URL to go to, and I couldn't even figure out like what do I type into the web browser? Like what does this HTTP thing mean, and do I need to type that, right? So like that kind of thing, like now, of course, that's gone, right? Like we've sort of culturally, we've evolved to the point where everyone kind of has this common knowledge. Everyone basically knows. And like, you're just not an early adopter anymore if you're using the web. You're just like a normal human being, right? But we're not at that point yet in Web3. And I think fundamentally, the most important part of that is, getting to the point where you don't have to know a bunch of like weird technical jargon to get anything done, right? If I tell my dad, well, look, you're going to have to know about the difference between, an elliptic curve key and an RSA key, and by the way, there are different elliptic curves. The eyes glaze over very quickly, right? That's not what he's interested in. I find that cool, but he doesn't, right? So I think getting to the point where you just don't have to throw jargon at people in order to get them onboarded, that's a huge thing. And then I think the other thing, and this is going to go hand in hand, is we're going to see more and more applications that are actually about sort of day-to-day experiences and not about speculation, right? So whether that's using an NFT to get into a sporting event, or getting an NFT as an adjunct to my physical movie ticket, and then maybe that unlocks some collectibles or whatever it might be. This is an experience that like everyone actually has, that people use on a day-to-day basis. And if we can get to the point where it's totally natural to do these sorts of things, and the fact that it's powered by Web3 is not front and center, it just happens to be the technology, that's when we're going to be successful. Like, if you again, like if I tell my dad, well, when you go to YouTube, you're using this protocol called Quick. He says to me, well, I don't care. I just want to like watch some videos on YouTube, right? But the analogous experience for Web3 is like, well, you're on Solana, and it's really important that you know that because, XYZ is different. So I think just getting away from that sort of you must know all the jargon to get anything done mentality, and having really like compelling applications is sort of the way forward. And sorry, I know I'm going long, but just to tie that back to kind of the CubeSigner product, I think fundamentally this is kind of what's driving our vision on the wallet as a service product is getting the jargon out of the way, making, even for developers who are trying to build in this space, there are plenty of really sophisticated developers, but they're not cryptographers. They're not, fully enmeshed in, every difference between Ethereum and Solana and Avalanche or whatever it might be, right? So getting those people to be able to build great experiences for their customers by giving them an API that's performant by default and convenient by default, and most of all, secure by default. That's really kind of the driving motivation for our product.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you, Riad. All right, then we'll just, as we finish up this part of the podcast, just again explain who CubeSigner is aimed at. Obviously, there's to be developers and platforms from across Web3, but explain specifically the different kinds of developers that should be looking at this, and where can they go to learn more? Because I've been looking through your website. It's actually, it's a really nice website. It's really well done and a lot of great info there. So just to tell people all about that.
Oh yeah, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So cubist.dev is the website, and I would say, the kinds of things that we're focused on really with the wallet as a service product are things like, end user wallets, maybe it's a loyalty program, maybe it's a game, but also things like trading platforms or custody platforms. So basically the idea here is all of these have in common that you need to be able to sort of generate new wallets quickly, you need to be able to make transactions quickly, and you need to be able to sort of have fine-grained control over which wallet does what. So I think in all of those cases, whether it's something more trading focused or custody focused, or whether it's something much more end user focused, like a wallet or an NFT loyalty program, I think all of those are great applications.
Yes, indeed. So the website cubist.dev, of course, link is in the show notes, folks. And just to finish off this part of the podcast, maybe just Riad, so one of the first projects you guys worked on was a platform using, I believe, bank grade hardware to manage the keys. But this service was effectively built for institutional staking providers when Ethereum first did the merge. That's right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's actually, I think this is kind of an interesting point in the sort of development, or well, it's maybe too young to call it history, but in the development of CubeSigner, one of the first applications that we really started thinking about for key management was, how do you manage all the keys that, say, an Ethereum validator operator needs to use, right? So if you're running a liquid staking protocol, you've got a bunch of machines and they're all sort of connected to the Ethereum network, and they're constantly generating new signatures to secure the network, right? And so there's kind of a lot going on there, but at the bottom, an Ethereum validator is somebody who has staked 32 ETH. So that's, I don't know what that is today, but it's, $50,000, $60,000, right? So that's a lot of money, right? You've staked 32 ETH and you promise that you're going to have high uptime, you're going to be responsive on the network, and you're not going to sort of sign bad transactions, right? You're going to behave only correctly, right? And that's enforced by, actually, you get penalized if you behave incorrectly. Now, if you behave just a little bit incorrectly, basically if you stop responding for a while, or something like this, then that's not so bad. But the really, really bad ones, these are called slashing events. What happens in that case is you actually lose a portion of your stake. You lose at least an ETH, maybe more, and you get kicked out of the validator set. So this is kind of a disastrous thing, especially if you consider that, I might be, if I'm a liquid staking protocol or a big validator operator, I might be running 1,000 or 10,000 validators. And if I have some bug in my infrastructure that causes me to sort of simultaneously get slashed on 1,000 validators, well, guess what? That's $1 million I've just lost, right? So this is a huge problem. And it's one that, I think remains for a large portion of the ecosystem somewhat unsolved. There's a lot of, it's kind of a nasty problem. Like, you can't get your infra wrong or you lose a bunch of money, which is like, that's a little hard. So the first product that we built in the sort of key management direction really had to do with safeguarding those keys, with making sure that not only will you not get burned, say, by an employee who decides to go rogue, or a bad configuration, or an attacker. You basically just cannot sign messages that are slashable. So that's the guarantee that the sort of validator product gives, is it will not sign slashable messages. So that gives a huge security blanket to folks who are running 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 validators, right? They can be sure that even if they mess up the infra just a little bit here or there, they're safe. And so that we got great response from that. And the other kind of piece of this that was really interesting is, because we were building for that very demanding segment where you have to be very responsive, you have to have very high uptime, because otherwise you lose money. We ended up sort of learning a lot about how to make a key management system that had really good responsiveness and really good uptime and really good security. And those experiences and that knowledge we brought to kind of our wallet product. So, we take the same kind of approach where, whether it's a validator or whether it's a wallet or whether it's an NFT loyalty program, for us, it's all about security, speed and uptime, and ease of use.
Got it. Thank you, Riad. Last question before we go to the break. And CubeSigner, it's multi-chain, right? Supports most chains?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have native support for a whole bunch of chains out of the box. We support basically every signature scheme you could ask for. It's easy to add a new signature scheme if you need one, but I think basically so far people have been satisfied with the ones that we have. But yeah, this is kind of one of the things that we were really focused on in the initial design, was how do you build a system that's flexible enough that, if a customer comes to us on Wednesday and says, you know what, by Friday, I need XYZ signature scheme that you don't support yet, we can say, yeah, we can make that happen. And we've actually done that before, where it's like, 2-day turnaround to get a new signature scheme in. Sure, we can make that happen. And I'm very lucky that since I'm the sort of cryptographer on the team, usually I'm the one who gets to do that, which is fun because, my favorite part of this whole thing is really writing the code. That's not true. I love talking with customers. I love talking with investors. But there's something really fun about working on a system like this, and especially with a team as great as ours. And so, this is kind of a cool thing that we can add new schemes, add new chains really fast. And so, yeah, I mean, you tell me if you need a different chain than what we've got supported. Yeah, we can make that happen pretty quickly. But yeah, we already support a huge number of chains and a huge number of signature schemes.
Wonderfully said. Thank you, Riad. All right, folks, let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll have some fun. We'll run Riad through the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round. Back in one moment.
Oh, this is a full-time job. Crypto markets really are 24/7. Oh, Elon's tweeted again about Dogecoin. I don't have the time to research the technical indicators of Dogecoin. What are you doing?
I just use CopyTrader on BitGet. One click and I'm copying the trades from an experienced crypto trader. Then it just gives me all the time in the world to watch my favourite Netflix shows and do all my favourite activities.
I've been up for 24 hours, I've had 16 cups of coffee, 8 energy drinks, and that bird noise is getting on my last nerve.
I think you need to go to bed.
Yeah, I need to go to bed.
Hands off, gains up. Start copy trading on BitGet.
All right, we are back, and I'm with Riad Wahby. Riad, as we've learnt, is the CEO and co-founder at Cubist. Solving key management across Web3. Very, very cool indeed. Riad, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Okay, we'll see how hot I can make these.
All right, just going to run some questions at you, Riad. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just give me, kind of rapid fire, honest, hot take style answers, as we like to say. Question one for you, Riad. Where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I'm fully about multi-chain. I think there are a lot of different problems that you can solve with technologies that are, Web3 based technologies, and different problems take different solutions. So there are some problems where Bitcoin style approach is the right one, but there are other problems where you just need a different approach. If you're making a game and you need super duper fast responsiveness, 10-minute block times aren't going to do it for you. So I think a variety of technologies is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I'm curious, so I'm always fascinated by, people that do have, let's say, electrical engineering, computer science background, people such as yourself. When did you first read the Bitcoin white paper, and what was your reaction at the time?
It was actually, okay, I have to admit to you, I kind of got to the Bitcoin white paper itself pretty late. I think it wasn't till, I don't know, 2012, maybe 2013. But for a long time, and this is like, one of these weird accidents of history. For a long time, I was the administrator of the Cypherpunks mailing list. And the Cypherpunks mailing list had, in the 90s especially, a ton of discussion about things like eCash, David Chaum's DigiCash, these kind of forerunners. And so I had been really kind of deeply embedded in that ecosystem for a long time. And then, somehow I was just kind of out of it for a few years post the Satoshi white paper. And then eventually, I guess I caught back up, read the paper and was like, yeah, this is cool stuff.
Oh, very nice. That's quite a quirk of history that you were, what did you say, an administrator of that mailing list?
Yeah, the Cypherpunks mailing list. This was like sort of the, kind of almost out of the like second crypto wars. There were these anyway, I could go on forever.
Yeah, ancient history, but such an important time. And well, everything from early computer culture, cryptography culture, all of that good stuff. All right. What would you say, Riad, then is your firmest conviction in crypto opinion?
Oh, geez, my firmest conviction. Okay, I'm not 100% sure that this is my firmest, but it's one of them for sure. I think that, we've seen in the last couple of years, a lot of folks kind of trying to rationalize away MEV, trying to say, MEV can be good. MEV, it's not so bad. It's actually, okay, I think that is basically just folks who like the status quo and are not willing to engage with the fact that it's just bad for the end users. Like folks getting front run, folks getting sandwiched, that is bad for the ecosystem and that is bad for the users. And any kind of excuse to the contrary, anything that's like, well, you could justify it in this way, I think it's just a justification.
Love it. Just to bring it back to cypherpunk world, you'll be familiar with the cypherpunk or manifesto written by Eric Hughes back in the day, effectively saying that privacy is necessary for open society in the electronic age. And back then, cypherpunks could see that there would be a threat between, I guess, the individual need for privacy versus the state that could control all forms of centralized digital systems. How do you think about that kind of tension today?
Well, I'm sorry to say, I think in a lot of ways we've lost, right? Like in a lot of ways, privacy is done. I mean, if you look at what's happened in Web 2, basically advertisements are kind of everywhere, and they're tracking you, and very much intentionally, like they need to in order to serve you the most relevant ads. And I mean, maybe that sounds like a good thing, but it also means that there is a trove of data on every person. So I think like a clear-eyed view of this is that in a lot of ways we've lost the privacy battle already. But I think one of the positive things to take away from this is that maybe in Web3 we can start to swing a little bit back the other way. We've seen a lot of technologies built around zero knowledge proofs, around other kinds of things that are really privacy preserving technologies. And I think there's an interesting balance here because, of course, if we think back to sort of the, I don't know if controversy is quite the right word, but the controversy surrounding, Tornado Cash and the fact that these technologies were being used for I think objectively evil things. We have to be very careful But on the other hand, technologies like decentralized identity, like anonymous credentials, like if giving me the ability to control very carefully, what information I reveal to people when I need to say prove some fact about my identity. I think that kind of technology is coming, and I think it is going to actually kind of chip away at the sort of the kind of overarching kind of surveillance capitalism system that we live in right now.
Very well said again. All right, Riad, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As a builder in blockchain, you'll be very aware of that. Of course, 10 years is a long time in blockchain. Look forward, Web3, anything you like, but 10 years down the line, what does it look like?
Wow. Okay, so I think I'm going to put a stake in the ground on one thing. I think we still live in a multi-chain universe. I don't think we get to the point where, sort of everything collapses back in on itself and we've got sort of one dominant chain. I think that's a good thing. Like I said earlier, I think we want to live in a world where we have different technologies that are sort of tailored to different purposes. I think another one is that we're going to start to see maybe sooner. I mean, certainly we hope sooner. But I think, in 10 years, I think we're going to look back at kind of the block space issues and sort of the throughput issues and the, gas price issues. And we're going to say, it's a good thing we've gotten past that. So, I think we're going to have a lot fewer kind of scalability worries in 10 years. Or if we do have scalability worries, it's because the usage will have gone up by 10 or 100x, and we'll still be kind of pushing the envelope of what we can get done. But I think another one is we're going to start to see more and more use of kind of more I don't know, what I think of as sort of heavy or maybe cutting edge is a nicer word, crypto. I think we're going to see a lot of, ZK proofs are going to become something that we use on a day-to-day basis for, I don't know, things like on-chain gaming or, as I said earlier, for some things like decentralized identity. So I think the future kind of holds better performance and sort of more use of the chain. I think it still holds lots and lots of different chains and a lot of variety across the ecosystem. And I think we're going to start to see the emergence of those kind of privacy-enhancing technologies.
Like it. All right. The flip side, I guess, of that 10-year view is looking at the present. I always enjoy the quote by William Gibson, who, of course, said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, Riad, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Wow. Okay, while I think of an answer to that, I should say probably most of your listeners know this already, but William Gibson actually used to have, I'm not sure if he does anymore, a great Twitter presence, and it's a total pleasure to read his posts. So Great Dismal is his handle. I really, really love William Gibson's Twitter presence. Anyhow, so I think, okay, here's an example of something where, folks basically, there are some folks who are doing it, and for other people, it's kind of magic. I think when we start to look at the way that, sorry, I'm just sorry. So I think when we start to look at kind of cross-chain technologies, there are a few cases where, it used to be the case that, well, you have a bridge or you have a swap or you have something like this. I think a lot of folks today kind of still think in that mindset where it's like, well, you got a bunch of separate chains and they all kind of operate on their own, and maybe here and there you can kind of get this sort of really inconvenient bridging between them. But I think actually we're starting to see the emergence of these kind of cross-chain applications that actually really do work in a smooth and seamless way. And I think folks aren't quite aware of them yet. But one example that I really like is there's actually a friend of ours. It's a company called Squid. They work on Axelar. They're a liquidity router, and I mean, their technology is kind of like magic. Like it's so cool to be able to sort of almost like super quickly move liquidity from one chain to another. And I think folks have had in the past this kind of perspective that it's a super hard thing to do. And I think fundamentally, technologically, it's a hard thing to do. But these are problems that are really getting solved today. And I think maybe people aren't as aware of it as they could be at this point. So that's one. I'd say one other one, and I promise I won't go too long. One other one that I'm really kind of excited about is I think what we're starting to see with the emergence of sort of the restaking ecosystem with Eigenlayer, the sort of private chain systems that is sort of like what Ava is doing with subnets. I mean, these are going to these are going to change the way that we think about applications on blockchains, because it's not the case that I'm writing a smart contract anymore. It's the case that I'm defining my own chain, and it's actually easy to bring it up and to get it running and to actually get the performance that I need for my application. So you can do that today. You can launch, Eigenlayer is not quite ready yet, but that's a super exciting one. But you can also, you can launch a new subnet. You can customize it to what you need it to do, and that's kind of crazy because it's actually a ton of tech to get that up and going. So I think that's another one where it's like people maybe are dimly aware that this is possible, but maybe they're not quite aware of the extent to which you can really actually do this today, and you can sort of customize a chain to your application's needs in a kind of almost magical way.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. All right, let's flip it a bit then, Riad. What keeps you up at night? So, for example, Bitcoin had the advantage of almost having an immaculate conception, if you like, as the first blockchain, and nobody cared. The miracle of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin was able to survive its early years. It is now arguably, from one perspective, the only truly censorship-resistant, decentralized global blockchain at scale. Ethereum perhaps is on the way. A lot of the other chains are decentralized and perhaps in name only, and true practice maybe less so. How confident are you in the ability for new chains to kind of reach true decentralization at scale over time? Is there anything that worries you about that, the kind of the 0 to 1 journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that really should worry everyone here is, and maybe a little bit of the excesses of the last few years have drained away, just because we're in a little bit of a winter. But I think along with sort of crazy hype and exuberance, what we started to see was a lot of corner cutting, right? Folks who were like, well, I'm going to build this kind of amazing thing, and someday it'll be decentralized, but don't worry about it. It's not right now. And I think a lot of folks were sort of ready to accept that because, we understand it takes a while to get something bootstrapped, and, Bitcoin's had a long time, and other chains haven't, right? So, but I think you're totally right that we have a little bit started to see, maybe, I'm not quite sure the right word, maybe we've seen a little bit of glossing over of the need for decentralization. We've seen a little bit of, don't worry about that until later kind of attitude. And to an extent, I can understand it. Like I said, you need to bootstrap. But on the other hand, I think we really do need to pay attention to the kinds of assumptions that we're building into the systems that we're building. Because, maybe, sorry to nerd out a second here, like the really big risk with these chains that aren't really decentralized, these chains that are sort of operating on, kind of hair-raising trust assumptions when you really get down to it, the really big risk is that there's a huge correlated failure there, right? And we've seen this in the past with chains that just kind of crash and burn, yes. Right? And so if we're willing to sort of make that sacrifice of, well, we don't really need decentralization right now because we need something else, we just have to be clear about what we're giving up. And in some cases, what we're really giving up is resilience to sort of black swan events. And that kind of thing really does keep me up at night. This worry that, if enough things just happen to go wrong in the right way, and it's not that many things, we could actually have a serious kind of systemic meltdown in certain parts of the ecosystem. So I think really keeping the focus on making sure that the technical underpinnings are solid, making sure that the chains that we're using are actually focused on sort of reducing risk, spreading out risk, getting rid of sort of highly correlated failures. That's kind of crucial because our industry has had, a few black eyes. Yes. We've had more black eyes than we have eyes. Unfortunately, I think we really have to be careful about making sure that we don't sort of give people the impression that, this corner cutting will lead to these sort of huge black swan events and then really, really, really kind of undermine credibility.
Yeah. All right. Very well said. Let's try and bring it back to a more positive frames of mind, though, Riad. But as we start to finish off, time to get weird just for a second. Will be interesting to see if you go positive or negative here. Look, if we zoom out, what do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
Oh, geez. I go back and forth. It depends on the day.
Yeah.
Some days it's just gray skies, right? I think we've seen in the past that humans have kind of this amazing ability to to kind of pull stuff together at the last minute. So hey, here's hoping, right? But I think we really do have to be quite serious about it. And what I was talking about just now with kind of black swan events, that doesn't only apply to the blockchain ecosystem. I think what we saw in the weather in the last 6 months really should be troubling all of us. And I think kind of taking that kind of thing very seriously is important. So I'd say I'm a big admirer of the human capacity to be to sort of pull together and to actually pull all in the same direction. I know the capacity is there. I'm waiting to see us start actually pulling.
Yeah. All right. Let's close this out, Riad. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Oh, geez, that also changes day to day. But I'm going to try and think of something that I've read recently that I really like. Here's one that I didn't actually read it recently, but it's kind of an amazing piece of science fiction. So it's called The Stars, My Destination. I think it's by Alfred Bester. And it's kind of an interesting book for a couple of reasons. So it's a quite old book. I don't know, for science fiction, quite old. What is it, 1950 something maybe? And the kind of amazing thing about this book is that it kind of anticipates almost all of the sort of cyberpunk elements of Neuromancer. So in Neuromancer, we had sort of mega corporations have kind of run wild, and we have sort of all these the sort of metahuman kind of these sorts of elements. If you read this book, The Stars, My Destination, you see these elements in there, and it's really like 30 years before Gibson had any of these ideas. So I think it's kind of an amazing piece of science fiction, just from the fact that we think of cyberpunk as being sort of a product of the 80s, and I'd say this book very, very clearly is the forerunner, and for that reason is important to read.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. You're exactly right. First published in 1956. The Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester. And indeed, Wikipedia says the novel was both widely criticized and praised when first published, but now appreciated as a classic work and a prescient forerunner of the cyberpunk genre. So, yeah, fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, Riad. Just look to close it out again for devs and other Web3 companies, platforms, chains that are listening. CubeSigner, why should people take a look, and where should they go?
Yeah, cubist.dev. Drop by, send us an email, get in touch. We'd love to talk. And I'd say the very, very simple answer to why is you don't have to trade between security, convenience, and performance. You can get all three, and CubeSigner can give them to you. So we can make it easy to integrate. We can make it easy to spread to new chains, and we can make your users sleep at night with great security, and love your application because it gives great performance and a great UX.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us on the show, Riad. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, there you go. That was Riad from Cubist. How good was Riad? Man, very, very, very smart man, very articulate, very passionate about, solving key management issues across Web3. And it's always fun to put people such as Riad through the very famous Crypto Conversation Hot Take round, because they invariably have interesting and insightful things to say, and especially enjoyed The Stars, My Destination. Have not heard of that. I don't think that's ever been selected. So shout out to Alfred Bester, if he's still around, for Riding the Stars, My Destination, back in 1956, and helping provide some of the early themes for what would become known as cyberpunk. Decades later, really, when, of course, the likes of William Gibson came along. So, really enjoyed that. Thank you very much to Riad and the Cubist team for coming on the show. Thank you to listening. If you're a listener, even here at the end of the show, please do make sure you are subscribed to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. Hey, it'd be great if you could actually go and give us a rating on Spotify, iTunes, 5 stars, leave a review, that kind of thing always helps. So please do that if you're still listening. We reached the end of another show. Thank you very much, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.